Good afternoon, everyone. I confess that you guys were going to be a very hard act to follow, and I've actually written something to read out, so I hope that it isn't too dry or stilted. But hopefully the work will make up for that. My name is Laura Denning, and I'm an artist whose work focuses on water. And I'm the recipient of the Bath Spa University Research Centre for Environmental Humanities inaugural PhD studentship. That's quite a mouthful. And I was supposed to complete in about a year's time. The research is entitled Developing a Hydrofeminist Art Practice. And overall it seeks to critically develop creative languages and practices which might successfully embody the feminist subject as process as a critical testimony, and to ask of those embodiments how they can impact upon our capacity to address the political bias that I feel is there that defines the climate change narrative. Hydrofeminism is a term coined by Astrid Neymanis and asks what might becoming a body of water, ebbing, fluvial, dripping, coursing, traversing time and space, pooling as both matter and meaning, give to feminism, its theories and practices. Come on in. So I seek to answer this through art practice, whilst also asking in what ways does and could hydrofeminism impact upon environmental thinking, particularly through the lens of ecofeminism. And I've written a half-hour paper, but I've got about 20 minutes, so I'm going to leave out the next paragraph and jump straight to this. Through the course of this presentation, I want to introduce you to a few of the projects I've developed or have been involved with. And we'll finally get to share an introduction of a work in progress called Fleuve, A Tale of Two Rivers. That's my French for you. But much of the presentation includes sound art. And I encourage you, when I play these pieces, to just close your eyes and listen. Turn off your eyes just for a few moments while you listen to the sound work. So, I actually feel easier with that. Yep. Okay. So, this seminar, one of the questions this seminar raises is where and how are artists engaging with social and environmental issues? Well, here's one place that I've presented work, the tidal pool at Devil's Point in Plymouth, near where I live. Last September I hosted a piece called Benthic Caress, a silent disco for 100 people, where the soundtrack was a collection of specially curated sound pieces by local, national and international acoustic artists, eco-acoustic artists, showcasing work which celebrates the diversity of marine life. Benthic Caress was a collaboration between myself, a Plymouth-based socially engaged community interest company, and the contributing artists. The invited contributors were Chris Watson, who you might have heard of, did the sound for David Attenborough for about 20 odd years, along with a lot of other stuff. Leah Barclay is an Australian eco-acoustic artist, and a guy called Jez Riley French. Chris provided 10 minutes of sound captured in the thriving corals of the South China Seas. Leah provided sound selected from her work with the Biosphere Soundscapes, which is an interdisciplinary research project working in collaboration with multiple organisations and institutions across the USA, South America, Australia, Europe, India, Indonesia and Cambodia. She didn't leave much of the planet out in that particular project. And James Riley French provided 10 minutes of sound taken from a recording in Iceland of minerals from the seabed dissolving in a solution that relates or is a metaphor for the corrosive levels of pollution in that location. 10 artists from the southwest region also contributed sound works, and together this provided a 1-hour soundtrack. And I'm just going to play you a little bit. stop. So I'll do that. That was work by Leah Barclay. So an ongoing project of mine, which was supposed to last a year, but I can see it lasting a lifetime, is called Reen and Hewish. And it uses the Somerset Levels and the Avalon Marshes as its focus to explore water in this very specific landscape. It is transdisciplinary. A reen is a ditch or canal used to transform areas of wetland into pasture and has basically shaped Somerset as we know it. Hewish is a habitational name that is pretty much unique to Somerset. You find some Hewishes in Devon, but mostly they're all in Somerset. And it's a habitational name that refers to a small area of woodland. And the area in question is subject to severe flooding, both from internal waterways and coastal flooding. And it is unique in the UK for this reason, being essentially a small delta which rarely rises above sea level. And most of you will have seen the heavy flooding in 2014, which led to, for instance, the village of Thorney being abandoned. Climate change is changing this landscape irrevocably. And Reen and Hewish proposes that wetness as a way of being provides a starting point for negotiating life in a changing landscape. One of the many outputs for this project includes developing a series of sonic reens, and here is one. This one's much shorter. So artist residencies, for me, provide intense periods of immersion in developing one's practice, and this year I've been selected for 2. Both have impacted upon my practice considerably. These residencies were delicious indulgences, the Porthleven Prize in Cornwall and the Ephemeral River at Dartington, although obviously that's a swimming pool, which is also at Dartington. I want to spend my time here today focusing on the socially engaged practice that I've been developing. So instead of saying too much about these residencies, I simply want to flag them up as an important part of the process and share a sound work that came out of them. It's interesting how different sound systems give a different experience. I'll say also, this is a collaboration, this is an interspecies collaboration. Cows and minnows have contributed to this soundscape alongside me. crack on, and I'm going to talk about school workshops. I'm going to cut straight to the chase where it's a paper's gone. That went very quickly. Okay, so this time last week I was a headless chicken because I was about to present something called Hydrosapien. It was a 30-minute performance that explored the threats to our waterways, rivers and oceans. Using British Sign Language, a silent choir was accompanied by 2 experimental voice artists, and together they told this story. It brought together Plymouth's deaf and hearing communities, and if in the questions you want to ask me why I've written deaf like that, I'm very happy to share that. And their work aimed to push the boundaries of how sound can be understood, noise, experimental voice artists, silent, British Sign Language, whilst also performing an adaptation of the essay, Hydrofeminism. The 2 elements only came together for 2 rehearsals prior to the performance, and this quote from Hydrofeminism, and I won't quote that because I haven't got time. So, half the silent choir were school children. Here we go, yep. Some deaf, some hearing. This piece of feedback from a teacher who also joined the choir goes some way in answering questions around opportunity, implication and impact. This is what she wrote in relation to these pictures. The rehearsal this week was very enjoyable, and I'm beginning to understand how the performance may look. Yesterday I taught 2 of my profoundly deaf 7-year-old children the first verse after a discussion about what a poem is, words which describe an idea, and a feeling, but not a story. And in very simple terms we began to discuss climate issues. In response to this, they each drew a picture which I have attached for you to see. I was truly moved by the power of the poem, translated into sign to teach these children about the environment. And she goes on to thank me. Now, yes, I would say that, yes, I do want to go back to a piece back here, actually, because I think this is really important. Yes, one of the themes for today considers the challenges, opportunities and implications of accessing and engaging vulnerable individuals and communities through the arts and practice. And the term vulnerable is complicated within this example, not least because at least half of the vulnerable group, deaf people, that I worked with did not self-identify as vulnerable at all. And if asked, most of us in the hearing world, my most recently completed project, got to that bit. Most people would say that people who are deaf have a disability. My experience is that that's the perception of the hearing world, not the deaf world. So, let's cut to the chase and get to the title piece. That's what it looked like when I filmed it. A Fleuve, A Tale of 2 Rivers. On the one side we have the St. Lawrence River, it goes through Montreal. On the other side we have the River Severn. That cloud is Cardiff, that rainbow is Newport. I'm working with Eric Powell at Concordia University in Montreal on a project that explores the social and environmental ecologies of these 2 rivers. We are creating sonic art in response to the site, which draws upon performative ethnography, autoethnography and sonic-led fieldwork. I was over there in July and I'm going back there in February, and he's coming over here in June, and we're going to take our time to develop this project. And together we'll be exploring the socio-ecological histories of these 2 major rivers, either side of the Atlantic. And whilst both rivers are unique, there are parallels in their social and ecological histories. Both shape major cities, both host bilingual communities, both are estuarial, and both have strong historical connections to John Cabot, I don't know how you want to pronounce it. The objectives include uncovering, articulation and dissemination of the voices, human and more than human, that speak to the 2 rivers, the development through practice of new forms of creative ethnography, and the celebration of a wide range of cultural identities shaped by both rivers. In these 2 images we're looking out at the bilingual communities in question. The Kahnawake First Nations Reserve, which is where those trees are basically, is home to about 8,000 members of a Mohawk community, many of whom are eco-activists, water defenders at Standing Rock and at other contested sites. Cardiff and Newport, meanwhile, are cities with combined populations of just over 1 million people, whose national language, Welsh, is spoken by 19% of the population, if not by many people in Cardiff. They too find themselves motivated to become water defenders, opponents to a controversial scheme to dump mud from a nuclear plant off the coast of Cardiff, and have launched a last-minute legal challenge. Clearly, Eric and I are at the very early stages of this project, and there is everything to do, but already interdisciplinary challenges associated with bringing together science and arts perspectives and addressing critical social and environmental issues are there to be navigated. This is political, art is political, and I guess I still want to know the extent to which science might be political too. There we go.